It's Jack Arnold and David Harpool. We're going to go through some things today, talk a little bit more about the softer skills, qualitative things that come into play when it comes to financial planning and managing money. And my topic is going to be a book called Changing for Good. So I'm going to go through kind of the stages of change, which I think is interesting. And then I'm not sure, what are you talking about today, Dave?
I'm hoping actually to learn something about this book, to be honest with you, and see where it goes. I do have some thoughts, but I'll just see if maybe they fall into it. I too am rereading another book called Switch, which talks about our ability and really the way the brain works. So this they might work out together. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, cool. Let's get into it. So I read this book a while ago. It's probably at least a year ago, and I've thought a lot about it. I think it comes into play a lot. And it's something where the good thing about this book is, and a lot of books that are like this is, I think a big part of being successful when it comes to just managing money or really anything is just to kind of understand the way that your brain and your emotions can get in the way of what you're trying to accomplish, even things that you think are in your best interest. A lot of times it's hard. We'll know the things that are in our best interest. Sometimes for whatever reason, it's just hard to do the things that we know that we quote unquote should be doing or that we want to do, because we have these kind of weird tics. We tend to be very hard on ourselves when we aren't accomplishing things. We have conversations a lot of times with people about goal setting, and sometimes it makes people anxious almost because they've maybe set goals in the past and then they have failed to reach them, and they almost get kind of mad about even setting goals because they're like, why bother? It never works.
Yeah, you almost get a little paralyzed just hearing the word goal setting, because then my first thing is like, I'm going to have to commit to something. And if I give up on it, I've done that, but there's all sorts of typical things. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yes, right. So the book is more just about really the stages of change. The good thing about it is, as you read through it, the great thing about any of these things is you start to recognize like, oh, so I'm just not just crazy. Like, this is a very typical, normal thing. This is like just the process of how things work, and kind of beating yourself up about it is counterproductive. And if anything, knowing, okay, this is how this is probably going to go. I need to be prepared. And how can I set up a system or some expectations so that I can maybe short circuit some of these things in my brain that are going to get in my way. So
how did you come across the book in the first place?
I was actually from another book. I don't remember what the other book was that I was reading. I don't remember. I think it might have been actually a financial planning book, like a
textbook or something?
Yeah, Medea's in the financial planning program. They have a book that they were reading in there. I read that book. It's actually really good, but it's more technical. It's more financial planning focused only, and it's more academic, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. In there, they mention the book because they kind of touch on some of the topics. Yeah. I was like, that sounds cool. I'll read the book. That's kind of where I got it from at first, and I thought it was, like I said, it's very good. It's written by the guy's name is, I got it here. It's James Proshka. There's a few other authors on here. John Norcross, Carlo Di Clemente. It's called Changing for Good is the name of the book.
Will you show what it looks like, just for people who are watching?
That's what it looks like. They're researchers. They're all PhDs. They're professors, and they're basically doing research on the process of change and how do people change when they kind of set their mind to changing, or even when they haven't yet set their mind to changing. What is the process to actually change? They focus on a lot of different things. I think for us, it would be, what if you've gotten to I think this is great for two things. One is giving advice to others. So you have friends or family or whatever, and they're asking you for advice, or you see them doing something that's maybe not in their best interest and you want to help. We all have experience with trying to help a friend or give them advice on something that we just feel like they're just going down the wrong road and they just completely blow us off. And it's frustrating. Everybody's done that. Like, that's just a normal part of going. So it's giving advice to others, but also understanding that you're dealing with the same things. So the stages of change are pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and termination. So the first two, most of them are kind of self-explanatory in terms of the terms. Like you can kind of figure, all right, I know what that is. The first two are kind of the pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation would be a good example is you just don't know that it's something that you want to change yet. It's not even on your radar. You don't think it's something that you want to do. This is maybe not for yourself, but this is for like a friend. If you see them doing something, you're trying to say, hey man, like you keep doing this, like it's going to be bad, or, hey, why don't you try this? And you always meet that resistance. It's because really they're in that pre-contemplation stage where they just don't see that it's something to change. They're just like, what? I'm not even changing it.
Is that like a subconscious? Like that's what the first thing I think of. Like maybe in the background, it's going on, but it's not so prevalent, or it's not on the forefront that you or I myself is saying, all right, I need to work on my eating habits or whatever the case may be. Is that what you mean?
Kind of. That's a great point, though. It is a little bit of it's in your subconscious that maybe it's not the best thing. But maybe you just haven't accepted the fact that it's something that you want to change yet. Maybe it is a little bit of your conscious mind rejecting the idea that you want to change something. And that's when people get very defensive about it. Like they just don't want to talk about it at all. So yeah, it is a little bit subconscious. I think that's a great point that you brought up is, a lot of times when we're talking through things with people is we're trying to take things that are subconscious that you don't think about on a regular basis and make them conscious thoughts so that you can actually start to work with them. So, for instance, we talk a lot about budgeting and cash flow stuff is to keep up with it because those things a lot of times are operating in the background and you're not even aware. So just bringing the awareness up so that you know what you're doing is valuable just to know, okay, this is what's happening. And then you can start to change stuff. So you're more or less bringing the pre-contemplation stage into the contemplation stage because now you see it and you say, okay, this is something I want to change. So really the difference is pre-contemplation is I don't want to change it. It's just not on my radar. I'm not aware of it. Contemplation is you start thinking, okay, I think I might want to do something about this. I want to change this. And you start thinking it through. You haven't done anything yet, but you're thinking, maybe you're researching or you're kind of thinking about things.
Got it. So it becomes top of mind, and now it becomes, I don't know, you said the third step is going to be, but I would equate it to, I'm having a conversation with you about, I'll just pick on the eating habits. Man, I've realized that I've really been feeling sluggish lately. And I think it's because of, I've been eating a lot of sugar or I've been drinking a lot of sodas, and it's just kind of starting to bug me. So now I'm contemplating maybe this is an issue. Maybe I am concerned about it. And I'm assuming maybe now I need to start thinking about what should I do?
Exactly. So this is kind of like the time when you're a little bit more open to suggestions like, okay, I need to, whether that's asking a friend that you're comfortable with or a family member that you think we've mentioned this before, somebody that give you kind of straightforward advice, this is kind of stage where you're thinking about, maybe this is something I should change. And then you're going to go into preparation where you start kind of laying the groundwork to change. So you are, maybe you're thinking about, okay, here's what I need to do at the grocery store. If you're talking about eating habits, or you're saying, okay, I know I want to change my spending habits. I want to save a little bit more money. I haven't really done that in the past. I don't have the savings habit kind of set up. I want to change it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm preparing to start doing things. And then you lead into the action stage where you're just basically executing the preparation stage. So you'll kind of see a little bit is, we talk about the think, plan, live stuff is, those first two stages are kind of the combination of that. It's let's think through these things in a way. So in some ways you're bringing the unconscious conscious, so you are aware of it, but you're also talking about the things that you're already kind of preparing that you want to do something different. So you're just working through, what am I trying to change? I think I want to do this, or I never thought about that. Maybe that is something that I want to change. The next part, the planning stage, is obviously kind of more preparation. What are we going to do? What's the kind of nuts and bolts of what we're going to do? We're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's what we're going to do. And then the action stage is just really the live stage. And that goes on to the next couple of stages is execution, doing the things that you kind of planned on doing. So that's the first, 4 stages really. Is pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action. Those are the first 4 stages.
I think to your, relating it to the think and the plan live part, I think a lot of us have found that the thinking part becomes the most difficult part.
Yes.
Because we just have so much going on, right? We got 2 kids, they're in school, getting ready to do some outdoor activities. I've got a business, my wife works, whatever your situation is. And then you get through the end of the day, and this is a little bit about the switch book that I'm reading, which is the 2 sides of our brain, the limbic and neocortex. The limbic's the exciting, emotional side, kind of drives us on quick impulses, also gives us the ability to have autopilot. I brush my teeth every day, and while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm doing something else because I don't have to think about how to brush my teeth.
Yeah, right.
But then you have the neocortex, which is your analytical thought processing, strategizing. And at the end of the day, for a lot of people, and I would put myself in this category, I'm pretty analytical, like numbers, I like to plan. I'm exhausted come 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So I don't have the additional energy and drive to now sit down and say, okay, spending habits are a little bad. I would like to save more, or eating unhealthy, or we feel it's anything. Now what should I do? I could do this, I could do that. And then you get to a point where you're like, you know what? I can't think this. I'll do it tomorrow.
That's a great point. I'm totally going to screw these numbers up, but the numbers are really kind of crazy. It's something like, your brain uses like 30 or 60 or some high percentage of your calories that you consume. It uses a ton of the energy that you actually consume, but it only is, it's 10% of your body weight or something. It's a very small portion of your overall body weight, but it uses a big portion of the calories that you consume, which seems, to your point, you think like, running 10 miles is the thing that would burn me out. But really thinking really hard about a problem we talk about this all the time. The Zoom thing is like burns you out just because it just messes with your mind. You get worn out more thinking through decisions. That's like decision fatigue is like a real
it's the analysis paralysis.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. So sometimes you'll get into that kind of contemplation stage and start thinking things through, and it's hard to get it past that. Sometimes you say, I know I want to change, but good grief, well, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't even know what to do. It's kind of overwhelming. So yeah, even moving from contemplation to preparation can be a hurdle if you just, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think whether, you use AVID or True Wealth process, I think walks people through really helping to think about things and clarifying what's top of mind. Use someone else. I think I personally find value talking with you, talking with Melissa or Kevin or someone else. Sometimes you hit like on the surface of the topic, and unless you feel really comfortable, but having someone else just listen and maybe ask questions. Oh, why do you feel that way? Oh, that's interesting, because it's gets the thoughts out of your brain and out there, which I think helps manifest future action in itself, but then also gives another perspective, an unemotional, kind of this unbiased, you care about me, so I value what you have to say, but you're not me. So you can view it differently. It's that separate lens kind of to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, having writing stuff down, that's a good one. Talking to yourself on a recorder, whatever you have to do. I think that's the, I don't know if we've talked about this, the whole, we do a parking lot. So sometimes you'll have those things like in the back of your mind, like, I need to get the tires changed on the car. Or I need an oil change or whatever. And it's just like, it runs on a constant loop in your mind and it wears you out. Like, you're better off just getting that stuff out of your mind. And even if you just write it down on a to-do list, to get it out of your mind. Your mind's really good at problem solving. It's not really good at storing stuff. That's not what it's that's good at problem solving.
It's funny. I was talking to a friend, John, who did adult counseling for a long time, and that was his background, the master's degree. And he said one of the key things that he worked with women, and I didn't know this, that females have a much better ability, which is also a detriment, to think things through when they're laying in bed. So at the end of the day, the house is quiet, they lay in bed, and they're just like, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jack, with Jessica, but Melissa, multiple times, I'm like snuggled up, ready to conk.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what do you think about a Murphy bed in the back bedroom? And I'm like, we've had all night to talk about this.
Yep.
My point being is his recommendation in those situations was take those things and write them down. Make a list so that you're mentally and so even subconsciously, you've addressed it. In the bed is not the time to solve it. It's going to keep you up at night. It's going to stress you out. It's going to provide more anxiety probably. So just write it down. And the moment you think about, should we put a Murphy bed in the back bedroom? Just know you've already addressed it. It's written down. You'll handle it tomorrow. Most important thing right now, I'm in bed and it's to sleep.
Yeah.
And I think it's crazy how our brains work that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about stages of change and going through all these things, but when it comes to money too, especially when you're in a relationship, there's a whole other person that has needs and wants and expectations and things that they want to do. So, it's hard enough doing it on your own, and combining that with somebody else is just, it raises the level of difficulty 10x. Like, it's that much more difficult. So none of the stuff is easy, pretty much. That's the basis. So, once you get in, so with the stages of change, you got pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action. Those are the big ones. The next two are maintenance, is kind of when you get into where you've changed it. It's kind of become a habit at that point. So, example would be, you decide you want to start taking better care of yourself or being a little bit more active. You research a gym, you find a gym that you like to go to, you start going to the gym, and then it becomes part of who you are as an identity, when then it feels odd that you don't go on certain days. That would be when it just becomes, then it's maintenance. Then you just have to do it all the time. And then the last one is termination, where you're done. Like, it's become such an ingrained part of you that you don't have to worry about it. It's just part of who you are. I don't know. It's hard to say that there's anything other than like an ice cream habit that you're trying to start that you could keep and get to the point where it's like termination. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Like, if I was trying to eat all the time, yes, that would be automatic. But something where you're doing something, especially proactive, you're doing something ahead of time, fighting off issues, whatever that may be, whether that's, health issues or money issues, and whatever it is that are the consequences of what you're doing are years and years and years down the road. Anything proactive like that is going to be hard to get to the point where you're at termination, where you don't have to pay attention or put any effort into it anymore. I think that'd be very difficult to get to that stage.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So were there things in the book, like suggestions or thoughts on that stage? What are ways to continue to be successful? Because you've already made progress, you're already making change, but I think big change is spot on to what you said. Is it's now part of my life. I used to be unhealthy, but now I work out. I'm a worker outer. I'm a runner. I lift weights. I'm a whatever. And you tell yourself that, and now you're, I don't want to let myself down because I'm a runner. That's what I do. I run now. So what did the book have to say about it? Anything specific?
Well, I think some of it is the stuff we've already talked about. So some of it is writing stuff down or getting that out of your head, or having, whether it's a community that you belong to or a person that you talk to or an advisor that you have. Those things are good to always be keeping it top of mind. One point they make really throughout, and this is something to remind yourself, is, the stages of change, that's not super linear, where you're just like, you go from this and then you're in this and then you're in this and then you're in this. All of us have experience with, you get to the point where you make progress and then you fall off a little bit. Maybe you get to pre-contemplation, preparation, action. You're doing some things. Maybe you get into maintenance and then you slack off and then you go back to your old ways. And now you're just like, crap, I have to work my way back up, which is demoralizing. If you think, you start telling yourself like, it's a me problem. There's something wrong with me. All these other people seem to have no trouble doing all these things, but that's just not true. Like, it's a very normal thing to do the kind of the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back type of thing. You're going to go up and down on these. And they have a picture in the book that's kind of like a circular stairway. It's kind of like they use the Leaning Tower of Pisa as an example, where you're kind of going up one way, but then the other way, you're actually coming down when you go up the stairs in the leaning tower. You're going up the steps, but then you're kind of coming down. So you're not just going up like this, you're kind of going in a little bit of a zigzag fashion. And sometimes you'll fall back. And I think the good thing about that is realizing that, you're not a broken person if you've made progress and then you fall back, that's completely normal. I think the good thing is to say, a point in the book also is preparation for hurdles. We talk about this with people all the time is, for example, if the health thing is a good one, but let's say that you want to say, I'm going to start, working out or whatever. But if the environment around you is not conducive to that, the people that you're around, whatever that may be, if it's just not the community that you're involved with, it's going to be difficult to get out of that mindset. And there's a chance that there's people, let's say, that you would say are your friends, that will be what we could call haters. You start trying to improve on something and people start getting maybe insecure about they're not doing it. So they start dogging you about it. And you need
why are you doing that, man? What happened to you?
Yeah, right. And that, of course, it could be much worse things. If you're a drinker or something and you're trying not to drink anymore, like, if all of your friends are drinkers, like you have to know, like you're going to lose some friends. But just being prepared, like my life is going to change. The things around me are going to change, and I may lose some things that I actually value, but it's kind of for the greater good, and just being ready for that and writing down, here's what I might lose and these kinds of things.
And what comes to mind too is from a financial standpoint, we work with a lot of folks that are in the accumulation phase, right? Yep. So we're saving. We don't have the wealth, but we want to get there. Yep. And in order to do that, a lot of times it starts with the basic cash flows and monitoring it. And we've seen this in a number of examples. Even personally, I can relate to this, where things are going well, and maybe you're watching your habits spending wise, you're feeling good about it, you're starting to save a little bit, then something comes up and it throws you off rail, or you just get beat down by the boring repetitiveness of saving money every month, paying on the debt. It's so boring. And you're like, screw it. I'm going to go buy a new pair of shoes and I'm going to go to dinner and spend a blah, blah, blah. But then psychologically, you beat yourself up like, and I'm saying this because it's totally normal. That's what you're saying. This is a normal thing. You're not alone. And we would say, if you're doing financial goals, to give yourself little breaks, reward yourself. If you're trying to pay off debt and you have 4 credit cards, for an example, and you pay the first one off, it takes you 6 months, celebrate. Don't go crazy. Don't run the credit card back up with a trip to Jamaica. But, so those little psychological things too, because it's inevitable that you're going to step back a little bit. Human nature.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be very difficult to get to the point where it's not hard. Like, it's just hard. This stuff is hard, especially, like I said, doing proactive things and doing things that are in your best interest in the future is hard to do, because you don't live in the future, you live today. And it's hard to constantly be on that. I'm committed to bettering my future and being realistic about what I can do today. The whole environment thing is big, because you can think about, when it comes to money anyways, the environment that you're in does make a huge difference. We're actually pretty lucky. Obviously, we're doing this for a living. So this is always a top of mind thing. And we're talking about it to each other. And we're talking about certain cases, and we're talking to it with clients. It's always on our mind. It's constant. We have a culture of planning and, doing the right things and thinking this stuff through and managing your cash flow. This is like big, big, big stuff to us. And it's every day. But when you work in an environment where it's not a big thing all the time, which is the norm, most people are not doing these types of things. And you work in an office building, or, you're an athlete, which that always comes up, is you're just in an environment where spending money and not really taking care of it or thinking these things through is an odd thing. So working, like I said, in an office building, it doesn't matter what job it is. You work in healthcare, doctors, that's always the big thing, is they all make good money. And sometimes you're like, well, this guy down the street's driving an Audi, I should be, and you start to it's difficult. That's a tough environment to make good financial decisions in. And that's the norm for the vast majority of people, is you're just not in an environment that is predicated on just making good financial decisions. Just not. So.
Correct. It's kind of like the herd mentality.
Right. Right.
You know?
So whatever it is, whether you're doing it yourself or you do have an advisor, whatever it is, it's easy to be focused on the things that you want to do and say, I'm on board. I want to do these things. And that kind of, that half-life of motivation is, maybe that's a month, maybe it's 6 weeks, but eventually you're going to burn through that motivation, and you're going to have to somehow refresh yourself as to what you're actually trying to do so that you can focus on, I'm doing this because of this, and this is going to keep me on task. So
it's going to go back to the think part of the equation. If you've thought through it and you have a good idea of why you're doing it, what's the emotional reason, the satisfaction, what's it going to look like once you accomplish whatever this is, you got to revert back to that and rely on somebody that you've shared it with to help encourage you. And then when you get done with, maybe you have 3 or 4 things that you would like to do, you get done with the first one, go back to the think section. Talk about this and reiterate what, at the end of the day, are you trying to get out of it and why? It always goes back to the why. We've said this in other webinars. Why are you doing it? And let's keep that in mind no matter where you're at.
Yes. Right. So just to sum up, there's the stages of change: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, termination. Those are the 6. Read the book. I've obviously left out the vast majority of what's in there. I would recommend reading the book if you're a reader. There's tons of information in there, but those are the 6 stages. So if there is something that you're trying to do, save more money, or, develop some kind of workout habit or whatever it may be, just know that these are normal things. And there's tons of information in the book about how to manage each one of those steps. Some of it is what we've talked about, but it's a completely normal thing. And you're going to go up and down. It's not going to be a straight line. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to work. So.
Good stuff. Thanks for the clip notes. I'll have to look into reading it myself.
Cool. All right, Dave. See ya.
All right. See ya.